There's a very important scene I forgot to share, which I'll include now. These are our elephant garlic. These are just large garlic, regular size, smalls. So the bed that I planted today is a small bed near the home. All the rest of everything is going into some larger farm beds. What I wanted to share now is why we leave the stem on here. This is hard neck garlic, and cracking this much garlic is a serious pain in the butt. It takes a long time. So you just put this stem down. This is a little awkward to do with one hand. See how it comes through like that. And then everything falls apart. If you don't do that, then you've got a lot more steps to do and a lot more finger work. Just pop it through. One hand cracking. Doesn't make a noise. Planting some of the largest garlic I've ever planted today. Been working on this for several years. Oh, little friend here. This is one of the problems of gardening. Ticks everywhere. Get that guy off me. So what I did here is, this is a nursery zone, and I'm putting garlic in on one of the beds, and it hasn't been tilled, quote unquote, with a rototiller or plow or something like that for a couple of years now. And so it had a bunch of cover crops and a bunch of trees in it. And so I broad forked it. That's this guy. So those are 16-inch tines. So I broad forked up and down. And then there were still some carrot cover crop. I mean, we eat it, but it was just sort of extra seed that I threw in to loosen and feed the soil. And we're not going to eat all of them. Some of them are looking like this, and I just wanted to get that off of the top for now. And so what I did next was to come in with a fork and sort of go like that and fork out any of the weeds, and then rake the top. And what I wanted to have a discussion about was to ask the question, is that no-till, and what is no-till? So you could say that by broad forking you don't invert the soil layers, although anybody who's actually broad forked knows that's not entirely true, because some soil comes up from the bottom, some wood chips or mulch from the top falls down into the cracks. So there's absolutely some amount of mixing, which is good. Any gardener knows that you want to have some amount of mixing. The idea being that A horizon, we're expanding that A horizon downwards and building it by the deposition of organic matter from on top. And there's lots of people out there who are super excited about no-till, and I think that this would pass the test for no-till garlic planting. I don't know why, because I certainly feel like I tilled the heck out of it. So that's, broad forking 16 inches down, getting out roots of weeds and cover crop, and now planting. Now I'm planting garlic here, and this is what it looks like. And then it just falls in, basically. So to me, that is fairly heavy duty tillage, in fact. No-till, you would never be able to push a fat clove of garlic into soil that deep if it were no-till. No soil that I'm aware of stays that loose in a truly no-till context, meaning that I'm not tilling it. So I guess there's some confusion around what tillage is and isn't, and I'm not saying that I have the answer. I'm saying that I'm generally confused by the discussion because I consider this, let's say, a friendly soil disturbance event. The reason why I feel fairly good about it is because although I am loosening and breaking up the soil, I'm not going to leave it exposed for long. I can see this white mycelial, these mycelio rhizomorphs happening here, and there's certain areas where there's a ton of them. There's little mushrooms popping up on the sides, and I'm not going to leave it exposed. I'm not going to be tilling it for a long period of time to dry out the soil. You know, it's not your typical like harrowing, disking to dry it out and then have like a perfectly flowable soil. I think the idea here is that I'm keeping the soil life mostly intact. It's cool. We're not beating the soil with like mid-season sun rays. But what's going to happen now is I'm going to plant the garlic. I'm going to plant some tree seed in here as well. And then I'm going to mulch the whole thing. So the soil will be open for less than a day total. All of these, I don't know why it's not focusing. All of these wood chips that have tons of mycelium growing in them, and the litter here that's really providing a lot of habitat, it's not gonna dry out. It's gonna stay moist because I'm gonna cap it with more wood chips from that mound over there right after I'm done. So I think instead of no-till, which this is clearly not, and most gardening and farming that is no-till, I think really isn't no-till. I think it's just soil-friendly tillage. So let me know what your thoughts are on that, because it's a big discussion, and I think there's some, I don't know, either misrepresentation or confusion about the words, because there are some really no-till operations out there that don't use anything other than just putting seeds into the soil, and that's sort of in a different world, and you could never plant garlic into that type of context, I don't think. So anyway, trying to gain some clarity around words that are often potentially misused. So the garlic has been planted. 2 rows of nut trees have been planted. I have some persimmons in my hand right now, so they're getting planted. And I put on 2 bucket loads of compost. I park the tractor at the bottom of the chicken coop, throw the compost out through a hole in the wire into the tractor bucket, and then drive it around to wherever I need it, and then just take it out of the bucket with a 5-gallon bucket and pour it on here. I initially spaced the rows in this little garden so that I would be able to straddle each bed with the tractor and then theoretically dump out compost or wood chips. But it just doesn't work, sadly. Sometimes you design something and it's great in theory but not in practice, because it just gets too wild and too many plants are reaching over from the sides, and the back tires on this tractor are too wide, and so they sort of don't leave a lot of clearance. They're kind of smushing in the sides of the bed, and I try to plant to the edges, so it just doesn't work with the spacing. If I had skinny tires, it might work, because even just putting, well, this is a lot of compost, to be honest. Putting, yeah, I would say I hit more or less average of an inch over this whole 100-foot long bed, which is a pretty good amount. But even that amount is a lot of work with a bucket, and I find the bucket is the best tool for this job. I mean, a full bucket of compost is heavy, but not terribly bad. You can keep it up for a good amount of time without hurting yourself or making too awkward of a movement or getting repetitive stress injury. So the bucket sort of works. It's not too bad. There is a trick where you can dump a bucket into 3 wheelbarrows that are right next to each other and fill all the wheelbarrows up, and then I could wheelbarrow down the paths here. I only have 2 wheelbarrows. I haven't decided to get a third to use that trick yet, but maybe I will someday, maybe not though, I don't know. I think I'd really love some skinny tires so I can get in here and just dump it nicely with the bucket. Anyway, moving all this heavy compost is a big part of the work, so it's always something to think about and play around with ways to minimize that. Now the garlic is planted 3 rows in the center and 1 on each side, and then between that is 2 rows of trees, like I said, walnut seed that are planted really close together. And I always just sort of put in random things here and there. So I put some persimmons over there, there's a couple apple cores, there's a few other things, just to see how it works out, because sometimes something just surprises you. And like, for example, over here, this side of the garden is just subsoil. You can see the bottom of the foundation there, just on really light colored subsoil. And I just stuffed the apple core in there and got a beautiful 3-foot tall apple tree. You never know what's gonna work or what won't. So I like to try to just experiment with some kind of plan, some kind of design, and then a little bit of just whatever's going on. So this will come up as garlic, the garlic will come out, and then trees will hopefully take over the whole bed and potentially plant something else in there when the garlic comes out. Finally putting the finishing touches on. I got quite a bit of compost right on top of the fluffed soil with the garlic and the walnut seeds, and now putting just enough compost, or just enough wood chips on top so that no annuals can get through, which is about 1 inch or so. There's no perennial weeds in here, so I don't need to go too crazy. The garlic will be fine under that amount of mulch, and I'll tuck it in for the winter. And then I'll be periodically, it's in a place where I go by pretty often, so I'll be able to check and see if there's any rodents or anything like that getting into the walnuts, at least for a while. This is cat territory, so good luck, rodents. I guess I shouldn't wish them too much luck, because they don't need a lot. All it needs to do is snow a little bit, and then the voles can go in and get a lot of the seeds. So we'll see if any of them come out. But this area has proved pretty good for nuts directly sown into the field, so hopefully that works out one more time. Anyway, that's how I do garlic.